In this video, we're going to go over the steps to directly import 3D part files from the SolidWorks software into Steel Solutions. We'll go over a few examples and then we're going to show the parts in Steel Solutions as they're correctly imported. So here we are in the main screen of Steel Solutions. The first thing that we need to do is come up to the top left of our screen and click the Add Part button. We'll get a Create/Import Parts pop-up window with a handful of choices. Depending on the version of Steel Solutions that you have, this window could look a little different, but we're going to look for and click on the button that says Import SolidWorks File. When we click it, we'll get an Import SolidWorks Files window. Before we try to select files for importing, let's take a look at the settings. To do this, we'll come up to the top right corner of this window and click on this cogwheel. When we do this, we'll get a SolidWorks Import Settings window. We have the choice to either launch SolidWorks as a standalone app or to launch it with 3D Experience. If you have an older version of SolidWorks before the rollout of the company's cloud-based system around 2020, then you would choose to have it run as a standalone app. We'll also make another video about setting up your system with a 3D Experience version. We have the 3D Experience version on this computer that we're using, so we'll leave that choice selected. Below this, we have a checkbox to turn on and off a timeout cancellation of trying to open SolidWorks. We can change the amount of time in seconds that our software will wait to launch SolidWorks before it times out. There are a few other settings dealing with the maximum plate thickness to import, maximum countersink tool diameters, and there are a few options to ignore stencils, bend lines, parts that contain certain things in their name, etc. If everything in our settings seem right, we'll click the Done button. Back in our Import SolidWorks Files window, we'll click on the button that says Select Files. We'll see an open SolidWorks Part/Assembly window. This is where we're going to navigate on our network to where our SolidWorks parts are stored. In the bottom right of this window, we can choose either a SolidWorks Assembly file or a regular SolidWorks part file. So we'll navigate to where we have our files. Okay, so we've located the part we want to import. We'll click on it and then we'll click Open. The import process will begin and it'll take a little bit to connect to SolidWorks. After it connects, we'll need to choose the part configuration that we want. When we choose that, we'll come down and click the Continue button. This will begin the processing of the part file. When the part is done processing, we'll see an import checkbox, the material and thickness of the part, and the grade of the part if applicable. To begin importing the file, we'll make sure the import checkbox is checked, and then we'll come down and click Import Files. And we can see the beam part that we chose was successfully imported. Let's look at the 3D view in Steel Solutions by clicking on the 3D View tab. And now we'll compare it side by side with our part inside SolidWorks. We can see all the holes, copes, etc. are all imported correctly. Let's do this same process for a few more parts. Here we've chosen a dome, chosen its configuration, and clicked Import. And here's an example of the same process with a piece of pipe. And here's an example of the same process with a piece of beveled plate. Finally, let's load a SolidWorks assembly file. So when we're in our open SolidWorks Part/Assembly file window, we'll need to come down and choose to Show SolidWorks Assembly Files, and then we're going to locate the assembly on our network. When the assembly file is done processing, we can see all the individual parts here. And when we click Import Files, when the process is done, we see all the parts from our assembly in our parts list with the different quantities and thicknesses. Let's compare this with the file loaded in SolidWorks, and we can see all the parts of our assembly were loaded correctly.